Welcome to Brain Secrets in the Age of the Brain. The science of brain function has uncovered amazing informational bits about the human brain. I like to call them brain secrets. Asia Hudson, assistant producer of Brain Secrets, along with videographer Grant Gilmore, have collected more questions from the street for this Ask Dr. Taylor segment. And here we are back on Brain Secrets. Welcome, Asia.
Thank you so much once again.
I've been looking forward to this. So I understand that this is another set of questions from when you were in Miami. So Tell me, was anything different with this particular group of questions?
So these questions were very different. The vibe of the questions were different, and they kind of all carried a similar theme. You'll see that when we play the video for you. But the biggest thing that was different was, we're always talking about culture. So it was the culture of the beach and how it changed and tapered off the further down the beach you went. So the first day we were at this party vibe, everybody's drinking and having a good time, hanging out with their homies. And as we went further down the beach, it becomes more quiet and a little bit more calm. And the questions that we got really reflected that. Some guy was mean to me. So
now, really, Asia, who's ever mean to you?
He was mean to me, Arlene.
That's okay. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. So it was just a very different experience. I do think that we had some really good and introspective questions, which I thought was special, but I'm excited for you to see them. I'm really excited for you to see these set of questions because I feel like, I say this every time, that the questions are different everywhere we go, but these ones are really different.
All right. Mm-hmm. So it just always amazes me. What you're talking about is a little microcosm of life, because some people are happy and outgoing, and people they hang out with mirrors their mood, which may not be bad, but it may be much quieter. And so if you don't understand something about the brain, some people would be liable to think, oh, I'm not doing this as well, or what's happened to my, ability and my vibe? Well, maybe absolutely nothing, because you're in a different culture or a little piece of the culture.
Right.
So now I'm really anxious to see, is the guy who is mean to you on tape?
Yeah, he's on tape.
Oh, this will be good.
So watch out, buddy.
So, Grant, where are we in being ready to roll the film? I want to see this guy that was mean to Asia.
Everything's all set up, ready to go.
Okay, let's do it. Does look like Miami.
Hey y'all, my name is Asia Hudson and welcome to Ask Dr. Taylor, where we take to the streets and ask random people questions about brain function. And then we take those questions and send them back to the desk of our world-renowned brain function specialist, Dr. Arlene R. Taylor, PhD. Today we are here again for day 2 in Miami. I've never been here before. It's fantastic. Last time the people were nice. Let's see if they're still very nice. And we're having a great time so far. So let's see what type of questions we get from the streets today. You had to ask a brain function specialist a question about brain function. What would you ask her?
How does the trauma of losing a loved one to suicide affect your brain function?
That's a really good question. All right, Dr. Taylor, you heard it. How does that? He wants answers.
I want answers for my loved ones back home who've lost somebody to suicide.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Take care.
Okay, you too.
It takes the brain on a roller coaster of anger that they did it, and fear that someone else might do it, and sadness because you suffered a loss. A healthy brain in a balanced state does not kill itself, period. Even when bad things happen, the brain wants to live. It can tenaciously hang on to life, sometimes for years and years, even after a negative diagnosis and terminal prognosis, so-called. Suicide likely happens only in a brain that is in an altered state. That can be due to substances, drugs, extreme depression, and so on. In a sense, suicide is both a loss and a social rejection. The brain processes it much as it processes physical pain. The term, a broken heart, is real. It is physically painful. In response, the brain releases its natural opiate, endorphins, to help you feel better and to manage the pain. Going through the grieving process for the loss also can help you deal with this social emotional pain. The good news is that even though you do not have the individual with you in tangible, three-dimensional presence, you still carry them within you. When you have been close to another human being and love him or her very much, their memory is filed inside your very cells. You carry them with you for as long as those cells are alive, which is as long as you are alive.
So a follow-up to our recent question that was asked by Jeff is, how does a major life event of trauma impact the brain? And how do we bounce back from that? That's a very good question, Dr. Taylor. All right.
How can we bounce back? Well, experiencing a traumatic event is one thing. Re-experiencing it in living color for the next 50 years by endlessly rehearsing it to yourself and anyone else who will listen is quite another. Some try to repress the memory, but it leaks out in other areas of your life. My brain's opinion is it takes bravery to deal with past traumatic events in a healthy and functional manner. Tell your story to a trusted friend or competent counselor. Be open to feedback about what you can learn from it or prevent a reoccurrence, and then let it go. It's a done deal. You can't go back and prevent it. You can't pretend it didn't happen. You always lose something in a traumatic event. Identifying the loss, grieving it, and letting it go helps heal the pain from the event. To refuse to go through the process means that you allow the person or persons involved with the traumatic event to live rent-free in your brain. It wouldn't matter to them, but it can matter to you and your health for the rest of your life. Healing from the event involves choosing healthier and thankful replacement thoughts. When you give up something, you always get something. Find it, and your life can change for the better.
Hey, y'all, can I ask y'all a question real quick? You sure? It's a brain question. It's a brain question. All right. It's always a little bit awkward when there's nobody around. Can I ask you a question real quick? Okay, so we've been standing in this spot for about 15 minutes and traffic is slow. So we're gonna make this a traveling show. So let's go. Here we go. Okay, so we're walking up to the street. Where we were before, there was a lot of bike riding, a lot of rollerblading, and a lot of skateboarding. And people don't really want to stop when they're in motion. So let's stop people who are walking because it's easier to stop those type of people in motion.
Good going, Asia.
So,
you're flexible.
Dr. Taylor, this is actually very interesting culturally. So we were further down this way the other day when we shot the first episode, And now we're at a different part of the same beach, and the culture of communication is definitely different. I wonder what that is. Huh. Can I ask y'all a quick question?
Better be good.
All right, let's see what you make it, okay? The question is, if you had to ask a brain function specialist a question about brain function, what would you ask her?
Brain function specialist. Yeah. What's up with brain functions?
What's up with brain functions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Aren't you a specialist?
I'm not the specialist.
I thought you were.
I sent it to her desk.
Why are you stopping people then?
Okay, ma'am, did you have any questions?
I do not.
So
All
you're not-
right.
so you're not the brain function specialist.
No, because we're doing
You're
it.
asking questions about brain
We're
function
doing it
specialist.
for the brain function
What's your answer?
specialist.
What's the
I'm not the brain function specialist. I'm asking the questions for her. All right, Dr. Taylor, my question is, funny enough, when I was making mention about how the culture of people on this part of the beach is different than the culture of people down there on the beach, then that guy came up, I asked him the question, and he was very rude to me. What kind of chemicals are released in the brain when somebody's being mean to you? I'm interested to know that question.
That is a great question. First, the brain may view rejection with anger, pouring out adrenaline. And as adrenaline levels go up, so does dopamine, the chemical to help you feel better. If the person was not aggressive, anger or fear may not be triggered. As far as rejection itself goes, fMRI studies showed that rejection and pain activate the same brain areas because they tend to overlap somewhat. Social rejection appears to piggyback on physical pain pathways in the brain. This may help explain the reason that, neurologically speaking, rejection pain hurts so much. A heartache can be felt as physical pain. Pain signals arise in the brain through two different pathways. A fast pathway passes through the thalamus, where it is triaged to sensory and motor sections of the cerebral cortex for additional processing. The slow pathway passes through the central nervous system to the amygdala, hypothalamus, and the prefrontal cortex. This pathway is linked with emotional reactions that occur in response to a painful hurt, such as the pain of rejection. Brain scans of individuals experiencing social rejection showed that the brain's opioid systems were highly reactive in situations involving rejection, releasing its natural painkiller, endorphins. The brain does not like you to feel bad and is trying to help you feel better. Researchers found, however, that the underlying personality of an individual appeared to play a role in how active their opioid endorphin system response was. Individuals who scored high in resiliency on a study questionnaire tended to release more opioid during social rejection, especially in the amygdala. Those who were already experiencing depression or perhaps repeated social anxiety failed to recover as quickly or as fully from a negative social experience. It may be that their brains were less capable of releasing opioids when under social distress. However, this is where a person's level of EQ, or emotional intelligence skills, can be seen, in how you choose to react or respond and recover. I believe high EQ skills help a person to recover much more quickly from rejection. It certainly has in my life.
The question is, if you had to ask a brain function specialist a question about brain function, what would you ask her?
Are you the brain function?
I am not the brain function specialist.
Okay.
We send these answers back to her desk, and she answers them. It's kind of like a reacts to.
Okay. I would ask the brain function specialist, whom I don't know, what triggers anxiety in the mind? How does it show up in your mind?
Good question. Pure and simple. Anxiety or its twin synonym, worry, is simply a form of fear. It's triggered when you are afraid that something bad will happen, or that something good that you hope happens won't. It's triggered by imaginary fears, which themselves can be prompted by scary movies. Anxiety never solves anything. It's like a rocking chair. It keeps you occupied and moving, but only in one place. You never really go anywhere. How does anxiety show up? In any number of ways, with symptoms such as sleep disturbances or feeling on edge, restlessness, difficulty concentrating or your mind suddenly going blank, easily fatigued, irritable, nausea, diarrhea, sweating, dizziness, accelerated heartbeat or palpitations, muscle tension, headaches, and more. The symptoms are not pleasant. Personally, I am uninterested in experiencing any of them, especially for imaginary fears. That's been a learning process for me since I was raised by a mother who basically lived in the encircling arms of anxiety. Perhaps the bigger issue is that a person can develop the habit of being anxious. Fear stimulates the release of adrenaline. And as adrenaline rises, so does dopamine, the feel-better chemical to counteract the fearful and anxious feelings. Anxiety can become a habit. It can even become an addiction to adrenaline and dopamine.
Ooh, I'd probably ask maybe something about sleep paralysis. Because I get sleep paralysis, so I'd probably want to know where does that come from and what part of the brain does that affect?
Oh, this is a fun question to answer. It starts with understanding that the brain generates two distinct types of brain waves that combine together to form a sleep cycle. Most human sleeping is non-rapid eye movement or NREM sleep. It's characterized by large, slow brain waves, relaxed muscles, slow, deep breathing. There's also rapid eye movement or REM sleep. I just got an idea. Grant, if my brain is hanging out somewhere on the set, would you bring it to me? Just half of it, not the whole thing.
This is for you meant your model brain, right?
Duh. Wise guy. But thank you. All right. So, rapid eye movement, REM sleep, is often called dreaming sleep. The reptilian, or first brain layer, and on this model you can see that, it consists of the brain stem, which connects to the spinal cord, and the cerebellum, which has to do with action, muscle action. And this part of the brain is believed to create REM sleep. It's also responsible for atonia, the paralysis of all voluntary muscle groups except for the eyes. Normally, the human body does not move during REM sleep. This is a very good thing because it prevents people from jumping out of bed and acting out their scary dreams. There is a REM sleep behavior disorder, however, where there is no paralysis. Likely, that's due to a malfunctioning of brain nerve pathways that ordinarily cause atonia during the REM sleep state. No atonia paralysis means that the individuals can kick and punch and flail their arms or even jump out of bed acting out their dreams. That can be jarring to a person's sleep partner to say nothing of risking a black eye from a flailing fist. The second or mammalian layer here in the middle of the brain adds emotion to dreaming. This is considered the third brain layer, and much of it is offline during dreaming. Taking an electrochemical nap, which may be the reason it's difficult to read material that you may see in your dreams. However, some critical thinking still occurs as the third brain layer or neocortex tries to help you make sense of your dream, especially when you remember what you dreamed when you wake up and suddenly think of a solution for a problem that has been bothering you.
All right, and that wraps it up for another episode of Ask Dr. Taylor, where we took to the streets of Miami and asked random people questions about brain function. We got a lot of great questions, and we're excited to see what you have to say and how you're going to answer these phenomenal questions today, Dr. Taylor. All right.
Well, I must say you were right, Asia. And by the way, for anybody who has not met you before, Asia Hudson is assistant producer for Brain Secrets. But sometimes I get her on this side of the camera.
Right.
And you were right about the difference in the vibe and the difference in the way at least one person asked questions. How long did it take you to recover from feeling like he was really being mean to you?
Well, Arlene, it actually took me, it kind of messed with me for like that last hour, especially because it was one of the last questions that we had received. And that part of the beach was so different that I had already had these feelings of rejection building up. So once I felt overtly rejected, I was mad. I was really mad. I was, keep it together for Arlene, Asia. Keep it together for Arlene. What would Arlene do, you know? So, but it really did bother me because you didn't have to come over here. You didn't have to be mean to me. And I cut out all the mean stuff. You just kind of see how he's getting aggressive, but I cut out the mean stuff. And it was just really weird because if you noticed, my overall energy in that episode was very different than it is normally. It started off very low, and that's because the first question that we got was about this guy whose father-in-law committed suicide. That was the first question, so it really set the tone for the rest of the day.
And that's a heavy question.
It was so heavy.
Anytime you ask it, that's a heavy question.
Mm-hmm. And so it was like that, and then anxiety, and then trauma, and all these questions around the same thing. And I'm like, what's happening on this side of the beach? Everybody needs a hug, you know? So.
You recovered. And that's where I like emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence doesn't prevent bad things from happening all the time, although you can reduce conflict. But it helps you recover faster. So I'm really proud of the way you worked through that.
Thank you, Arlene.
So I can't wait till next time and you tell me where you ended up that time to ask more questions. Thanks again, Asia.
Of course.
And thank you, our viewers, for watching. I'm pleased when others enjoy talking about the brain because everything begins in the brain. That's just one of many brain secrets.